Today we have some exciting plans. I have a test pattern for Stitch Witch patterns for her Gladys top. This person's patterns are really cute and unique, so I'm really excited to get my hands on this. I have recently purchased a printer, so now I can print all of the digital patterns that I want, which is very exciting. I don't purchase digital patterns because I know that I don't have a printer, and so therefore I'm like, well, what am I gonna do with digital patterns that are just sitting in my emails? So finally, we bit the bullet, we bought a printer, and now I can print off all the digital patterns that I please. The Gladys top is a high-necked tank with princess seams on the front and lacing on each of the sides. It seems to be very customizable with the sizing, which is great, and there are tons of sizes in this pattern, but this video cannot be all sunshine and roses. There has to be a little chaos, and that is the fact that I have to do this in one day. The mock-up, as well as the final garment, which I'm also considering making two, because I can't decide on a final pattern. So let's see what fabrics I have. So for the mock-up, I want to use up some fabric that I have just left over. All the fabric that I'm going to be showing you are bed sheets because that is like one of my favorite things to sew with. This is fabric that I had left over from the dress that I had made 2 years ago, so I will be very excited to use this up again. Once I have the mock-up done, then I can switch to the final fabric, which I'm pretty happy with the choices that I've picked, and I'm really on the fence of what one I should do. We have this blue floral, which is again leftover fabric from another dress that I had made 3 years ago now. And then the other option that I have for the final garment, which I just might have to make another one. I found this plaid pillowcase at the thrift store and I knew that I needed to make some type of top out of it. And I honestly think that this might be the perfect pattern to make it out of. With all of our fabrics ready and our printer set up and printing out our pattern as I speak, it's time to line up all the pattern pieces and then cut them out from the paper. And then we can get ready to cut into the fabric. Once all of my pattern pieces are cut out, it's time to start with step 1. With right sides together, pin side front bodice pieces to center front bodice pieces, aligning the notches. Stitch seams using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Reduce or clip into seams along the bust curve where necessary. Press seams towards the center front. Repeat this step for bodice lining. Bodice lining can be cut from a fashion fabric or from a traditional lining fabric. Leave a 2 to 3 inch opening on one side of the side front seams of the lining. Step 2. Stitch center back seams of back bodice together using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Repeat the same steps for the lining pieces, leaving an opening between the center back seams of 2 to 3 inches. We will use this opening to turn the bodice right side out at a later step. Make sure to backstitch at the lining openings. Step 3. Press center back seams open for back bodice shell and lining. Step 4. To create tie loops, fold loop pattern piece lengthwise with right sides together. Stitch edges using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, then turn the right side out using a small safety pin or fabric loop turner and press it down. And I will tell you here that this was probably the hardest part of this entire pattern. I don't know if my fingers are just not nimble enough to do this step or if I just needed a bigger channel or a smaller safety pin. Whatever it is, use the best trick that you can to turn out these fabric loops. Step 5. Cutting the loops into 16 equal pieces. Each piece should measure 2 inches. Step 6. Fold and press tie loops in half. With right sides together, place loops on the circle notches along the side seams with folded ends facing towards the center of the bodice on both the front and back pieces. Baste loops to bodice. Trim the raw edge of the loops to an 1/8 inch. Make sure that the finished folded loops measures 3/8 of an inch so that the ties can easily go through the loops. Step 7. To create shoulder straps, fold pattern piece lengthwise and right sides together, stitching edges using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, turning the piece right side out using a small safety pin or fabric loop turner and press. Again, this was not the easiest part for me. Step 8. Baste shoulder straps to front bodice at neckline circles along the 5/8 inch seam allowance line. Step 9. With right sides together, place bodice lining on top of bodice shell pieces, sandwiching loops and shoulder straps. Stitch bodice pieces together using 5/8 inch seam allowance and trim seams to a 1/4 inch. Step 10. Turn front bodice right side out through the hole in the lining. Press. Slip stitch or machine lining opening closed. Step 11. With right sides together, place bodice lining on top of bodice shell piece. Sandwiching loops, stitch bodice pieces together using 5/8 inch seam allowance, leaving neckline open. Trim seams to 1/4 inch. Step 12. With right sides together, place front bodice inside the back bodice, sandwiching the shoulder straps. Make sure that the lining pieces are facing each other and that the straps are not twisted. Step 13. Stitch back bodice pieces together across the neckline using 5/8 inch seam allowance. Trim the neckline seams to 1/4 inch. Step 14. Pull the front bodice piece out of the back bodice piece through the opening created in step 2. Press all edges of front and back bodice pieces. Step 15. Slip stitch or machine stitch the center back lining opening closed. 16. To create the side ties, fold pattern pieces lengthwise and right sides together. Stitch edges using 1/4 inch seam allowance and trim seam allowances to 1/8 inch. Turn ties right side out and press. On each end of the tie, tuck the opening edge of the tie inside at 1/4 inch and slip stitch or top stitch openings closed. Step 17. Take side tie pieces and lace up side seam loops. Adjust side tie ease to your own preference. And then that's it, the Gladys top is done. So let's see how the mock-up turned out. So I really like the cut of this. It's far enough in that it doesn't feel like it's cutting off my arms. And then the princess seams have turned out really nice. I love the adjustable on the back. It's very clean, very nice. Good job. Now that I have this done, I'm thinking that I might have to make a few more. There are a few things that I'm going to fix and tweak when I go to cut my new fabric, and that one is first I'm going to raise the neckline a little bit and take in the straps. That's just so that it sits a little bit higher on me so the princess seam flows a little bit nicer with my body. With raising this, I'm also going to elongate it because right now it fits right at my waist, but I do want it to be like a touch longer, maybe like a 1/2 inch longer. I'm going to add in another set of loops here so that I can have another tension to tie up the side so that the back doesn't want to flip up like this. Obviously this is a test pattern. I don't know how other people's are fitting right now, but that's just the way that it's going to fit best on me. So now I can change the pattern just a tiny bit. I feel like every single pattern you need to fit for your body. The person who creates the patterns is trying to fit for so many different types of bodies, and everyone's body is different. There's always going to be little alterations that you're going to make personally for yourself. That's why people that make patterns want you to make a mock-up. And even though that you're following the sizing that they have recommended in their pattern, sometimes there are things that you can't account for, like the length of your torso, or if you have scoliosis, something like that, where patterns don't account for that. And that's not the pattern maker's fault, that's just the way the bodies are. So that's why it's important for you to make a mock-up. I made this within 3 hours and probably could have done it less if I wasn't filming. So definitely this takes less than 3 hours to cut and sew together, and I think that this is a great top to make. But now is the fun part. We're going to use some different fabric and alterations to the pattern to fit it perfectly for me, and we will have 2 more tops. So with those changes that I had in mind to make from the first mock-up that I did, I have now created this one. I really like the fit of this. So all I did was lowering the neckline a bit, shortening the straps, and then I also lengthened the bottom edge so that it just goes a tiny bit lower. And this is what we got. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. Now that the testing is done and I've already sent in my pictures, now it's time to have some fun. What I like to do with paper patterns is see what else can be done with them. What I want to do with this bodice is lower the neckline, and I've already pinned out where it will go, and add thicker straps that would go up and over. I might just bring out the sides just a little bit so that my straps don't go any more in. I want them to go straight back. So just a few little alterations to the pattern, and we'll see if we can make a new top out of this pattern. We're going to keep the side ties. I'm just adding 2 inches more of length, We're going to keep the side loops. I'm just going to add a little bit more of length because I added 2 more loops on each side, so 4 loops in total. I'm going to alter this because I'm lowering the neckline even more. We'll figure this one out later. This side I added 1/2 inch to the bottom, but everything else stays the same. For the front, I'm adding 1/2 inch to the bottom for the length, but I also cut down about 1/2 inch from here, and I just rounded out that shape to get the plaid version that I had made. So although I wanted to go straight across, I'm also going to add 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. There. And I won't have to adjust for any. For the back, I want it to come out just a little bit more here. Plus 0.75 inches. By this point, I feel pretty good about making this top. I've already made it twice, and now with this 3rd time, I kind of know the ins and outs of how it works, and I feel like I can go a lot faster. And now we are ready to put it all together. What I usually like to do when I'm making my own patterns or just sewing in general, once I know how the pattern works and how the steps go in place, I like to clump together my steps. So instead of pinning certain things one at a time, I will pin everything together at the start, and then I can bring it all to my sewing machine so I can sit down so that I can assemble it all in one go. This makes it a lot faster for me and takes a lot less time getting up and getting down from my sewing machine. Then I can iron everything at the same time, I can stitch everything at the same time. It just goes a lot faster and I like the process more. I didn't do this in the mock-up and I was too late to do it in the plaid version, but what I like doing when I'm making ties is 1, making them a little bit wider. I just like to make it like 1/8 of an inch wider just so that I have a tiny bit more ease. I also like to finish off the edges before I turn it inside out. So I'll turn the edge in before I start stitching so that when I turn it inside out, it will be fully finished, so I don't have to struggle by pushing the raw edge back inside the tube. On top of that, I'm adding top stitching to all the princess seams. A few changes that I'm adding to this pattern aside from just altering the neckline, I'm adding in a ruffled edge, so I need to make a gathered strip so that I can create that ruffled edge for a little bit of a cuter look. I wish that I had made my wider straps just a tiny bit longer because I was kind of struggling for length when I was trying it on. Because I made the neckline lower, I wasn't sure how much longer I needed the straps to be, so the best thing that I could think of was just attaching the straps to one side and then lacing up the sides together, trying it on, then finding out how long the straps needed to be and pinning them in place before I top stitched them down. The better way of doing this would probably be knowing how long the straps needed to be beforehand. Like in the original pattern, the straps are a set length, so that way you don't have to fuss with figuring out how long they need to be before you turn everything inside out. But I think it turned out pretty okay, and I really like how this one turned out, and just love using up fabric that I have left in storage. So this is the first finished garment that I've made from the pattern. I'm really happy with how I've altered it to now fit my body. Obviously I'm test fitting the first one, so it's not always going to be perfect. It was very close though. Like the only things that I had altered for this version compared to the first one were just raising up the neckline so that the princess seams fit a little bit higher on me, shortening the straps. I added in 2 more loops at each side just so that there was more lacing going down the shirt that would keep the back from flipping up. So I think that fixed my problem for there. And because I can't help myself, I pattern tacked this pattern to make something a little bit different in my version of stays. This pattern was really easy to put together, and I was able to use some pillowcases and some scrap fabric that I had from past projects. It's so nice to find sewing patterns that allow you to use up small bits of fabric. There's another pattern that Stitch Witch Patterns has that I really want to try out now that I've done this one, and it is this pattern right here. I think it's the Rothwell top. I think it's so pretty. Now that I have my own printer, I feel like I have now stepped my sewing level up to using patterns from other creators, and it's always nice to support other people, especially people that put so much hard work into making patterns. So now I know what my summer is going to look like. I'm going to be printing off a bunch of patterns and seeing how they all sew up. So if you'd like to stay for more videos like this where I test out some sewing patterns, please hit the subscribe button. I really hope you like this video. I had a lot of fun making these patterns. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.